So I've made multiple videos about Ellen DeGeneres and the Ellen Show. Basically, it seems like a pretty bad place to work, and Ellen seems like a massive hypocrite. So I don't need to tell most of you, the image that Ellen puts out of herself is way different from the reality. On her show, she seems like a pretty nice lady, someone who promotes very good social causes, often brings people on who do good work, and all in all, the way she portrays herself is a typical Hollywood liberal. And you know the types, people who might not think they're so bad, who probably aren't so bad, but they're pretty ignorant about maybe more general issues. A lot of the time it's centered around capitalism, and you know the type of Hollywood liberal I'm talking about here. They might champion good social causes, but they still are very, very rich and benefit from a system that is inherently exploitative. And a lot of the times when you dig into their personalities and their past, turns out they aren't actually that nice. You know, even Harvey Weinstein used to be held up as some sort of great liberal who was friends with both Bill and Hillary Clinton and went on cable news to talk about things like the 2016 Democratic primary. Well, following on from a video I made a couple months ago where I talked about how Ellen used the pandemic to hire non-union workers, I'm going to go on to a new topic that's broken about a really, really toxic work culture, which includes managers working on the show being pretty racist. But before we properly get into the video, it would mean so much to me if you would subscribe and like the video. I am almost on 10k, and it would be a super cool milestone to hit soon. My Patreon is in the description, and thanks to everyone who's a patron, it means so much to me. I'm also on social media at The Cavernacle, and come join my subreddit at r/thecavernacle. So Christy Lee Yandoli from Buzzfeed News reporting, former employees say Ellen's Be Kind talk show mantra masks a toxic work culture. So Ellen DeGeneres has built her worldwide multi-million-dollar brand on the motto Be Kind, with lavish giveaways and acts of charity, but behind the scenes, current and former employees on her leading daytime show say they face racism, fear and intimidation. That Be Kind bullshit only happens when the cameras are on, it's all for show. One former employee told BuzzFeed News, I know they give money to people and help them out, but it's for show. BuzzFeed News spoke to one current and 10 former employees on the Ellen Show, all of whom asked to remain anonymous, fearing retribution from the award-winning NBC daytime talk show and others in the entertainment industry. They said they were fired after taking medical leave or bereavement days to attend family funerals. One employee who claimed she was fed up with comments about her race essentially walked off the job. Others said they were also instructed by their direct managers to not speak to DeGeneres if they saw her around the office. So since the last video kind of focused on the toxic workplace culture and I guess the union side, I'm going to focus on the racism side because that was kind of left out of previous stories on the Ellen Show. So a black woman who used to work on the Ellen Show told BuzzFeed News she experienced racist comments, actions and microaggressions during her year and a half as an employee. She said when she was hired, a senior level producer told her and another black employee, oh wow, you both have box braids, I hope we don't get you confused. And at a work party, she said one of the main writers told her, I'm sorry, I only know the names of the white people who work here, and the other co-workers awkwardly laughed it off, instead of coming to her defense. When the former employee brought up issues of race and representation on the show and asked producers not to use offensive terms like spirit animal in segments, her colleagues called her the PC police. When she started to speak up about the discrimination, she said all of her colleagues distanced themselves from her. Whenever I brought up the issue to my white male boss, he would bring up some random story about some random black friend that he had and how they managed to get over stuff, she said. He would use his black friend as some way to say, I understand your struggle, but it was all performative bullshit. After 1 year at Ellen, she said she asked for a raise after learning another recent hire made double for doing the same job, despite her having worked in TV for a decade. Her manager told her they'd see what they could do, but months went by and nothing happened. The former employee said she was also called into a meeting where executive producer Ed Glavin, where she was reprimanded for her objections to the term spirit animal, asking for a raise and suggesting employees on the show receive diversity and inclusion training. After the meeting, she left work for the day and never returned. She said she has no plans to ever work in the entertainment industry again. For years, she felt a fear of speaking out, but is now inspired to share her experience because of the recent conversations about race in Hollywood and other workplaces. I feel like I'm not alone in this, she said. We all feel this. We've been feeling this way, but I've been too afraid to say anything because everyone knows what happens when you say something as a black person, you are blacklisted. interested. The former employee also said her manager from Ellen recently reached out to her amid the Black Lives Matter protests to apologise for not being a better ally, but the former employee said it's too little too late. I feel angry about the way I was treated, and I'm always going to stand up for Black, Indigenous, Latino and Asian people, regardless if they're around. I can't not say anything, I'm not going to stop talking. So obviously that is extremely problematic. She's essentially saying she feels like, as a black person, she wasn't paid fairly compared to white people. Obviously the culture is pretty toxic, where she brings up that, you know, some of the staff should go on diversity and inclusion training, and they sort of said she was being the PC police. It doesn't really seem like a great place to work if you're not a white person. And again, it kind of speaks to this whole facade that Hollywood liberals often have. They might pretend they are pro-diversity, they are pro-equality, they want everyone to be treated equal, but at the end of the day, it's about making money and not kicking up a fuss. And I also think it's interesting that the manager actually reached out to her during the Black Lives Matter protests. But forgive me if, like the woman coming forward, I don't believe he's sincere. It more seems like he's trying to cover his back because he knows in the climate where more people are speaking out, just like the Me Too movement, that the Ellen show might get dragged into allegations that the managers working there were racist. Now you have heard me read that comment and you might think that she has not mentioned Ellen by name. She has not mentioned her making comments towards her, and that is fair enough. But what I want to highlight is that, like many people have said before in various other allegations against the Ellen show, is that Ellen isn't exactly hands-off. She's quite involved with the making of the show. And if Ellen was going to stand by her mantra of being kind, maybe she would be more active in rooting out discrimination and inequality in a workplace which is designed to make a show that bears her name. Now, some of you guys might not have seen my previous video, but I'm going to include a clip from it here. Here are stories from workers on the Ellen show and people who've just interacted with her of what an awful person she can be personally and how involved she actually is in her employees' lives at the company. Benjamin Simon summed up a Twitter thread. Now he does say it's based on people telling him this stuff, so he says you have to take it with a pinch of salt. So in a list of how awful she is to work with anyway, he said, A, she has a sensitive nose, so everyone must chew gum from a bowl outside her office before talking to her, and if she thinks you smell that day, you have to go home and shower. B, a new staff member was told every day she picks someone different to really hate. It's not your fault, just suck it up for the day. She'll be mean to someone else the next day. They didn't believe it, but it ended up being entirely true. C, when she's in a bad mood, staff members were highly encouraged by upper management to go into her office and do bits to cheer her up. D, she cares about animals, which is good, but so sensitive. For example, someone tried to show her a funny viral video and way in the distance a barely audible dog bark and she screamed and said, "Can't you hear that animal's in distress? Why did you show me that?" And E, if she doesn't like the monologue someone wrote that day, she'll drop it on the floor and say, "I'm not saying a word of that." Lastly, F, someone wrote a joke with the phrase, "It's like pulling a rabbit out of a hat," and she screamed, "Do you know how painful that would be for the rabbit?" And then he clarifies, obviously it's just random stories I've heard over the years from people who have worked on the show, and I can't confirm this fact, so please don't sue me, Ellen, or else we'll have to add another story to this thread. So beside the pettiness of it all, it's clear that she is aware of what's going on in the company. It's clear she makes a point of interfering in people's lives. You know, she's saying you can't eat certain foods on our workplace, and she obviously cares about animals to the point that she gets annoyed when they tell jokes that don't actually really reference animal cruelty, but in her mind they do. But I find it hard to believe if Ellen was who she said she was, and she did believe in all these things that so-called Hollywood liberals say therefore, you know, posting the black squares on their Instagram profiles, talking about Black Lives Matter, you'd think she'd be more, I don't know, active in rooting out racism in her workplace the same way she is active in rooting out people eating fish because she has a sensitive nose. So do I personally believe that Ellen is a racist? Well, based on the evidence here, there isn't anything conclusive, but I will say that I do think her persona is not real, and I think it's all about marketing. So here you have a gay, wealthy woman, and I guess the best way to market yourself as a gay, wealthy woman is to people who'd be more tolerant and accepting of you. So if you promote all these liberal causes, that is really pandering to your audience. Because while you might have conservative grifters like Blair White and Dave Rubin, these are really the minority. And of course, maybe someone like Ellen wouldn't want to sell out that hard where she has to appeal to a group that hate her very existence. But I still think it's pretty clear based on the personal stories of many, many people, both working with her or working on her show, that she doesn't really stand by the principles she promotes. And I think this is indicative of a wider problem in Hollywood, because you have loads and loads of celebrities, past and present, who have been so-called feminists, anti-racist, activists, and then you get loads of stories of how they are actually really, really awful people, or they're pretty weird. And the problem, of course, comes because most of these people are insanely wealthy, so even if they might have a degree of, I don't know, good morals on social issues, they do not recognise how social issues and economic issues are so intertwined, you cannot have a separate stance on either. So you often hear what people say is, I'm socially liberal, but I'm economically conservative. Doesn't really make any sense. For example, if you're socially liberal, do you believe in everyone's access to healthcare? And that includes transgender people, women, that includes minorities, all having access to these things. But if you're economically conservative, you probably agree with the for-profit healthcare system in places like America. So how can you be socially liberal if you don't really agree with socially liberal things like access to healthcare? Not having your employers have a say on how much access you get to treatment. Well, of course, a lot of these people might not be too bright to begin with, even if they have good social politics. And as they get wealthier, they become more and more distant, so they don't realise the reality for millions of people in places like America, but of course throughout the world. And you just had some weird stuff, like I read the other day that Jeffrey Wright owns a gold mine in Africa, while at the same time shitting all over Bernie Sanders and promoting centrist, socially liberal talking points. Seems like a lot of people in Hollywood are just massive hypocrites. And it is kind of funny because in a weird way, even though I absolutely abhor their politics, it makes you respect people who are genuine a bit more. So obviously you have very good leftist people like Susan Sarandon or Mark Ruffalo. Then you have very conservative people like Vince Vaughn and Clint Eastwood. And I guess I respect it to an extent because at least they're saying, you know, I'm not following most of Hollywood, I'm just gonna be myself and be upfront greedy and upfront against many, many social policies because that's what I personally believe. I won't be like Ellen where I'll portray myself as one way on my show, but in the background, I am really not a nice person and I don't stick by the principles I often promote to the public. Anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Please like the video, maybe subscribe. I'm so close to 10K and it would really mean a lot to me if I hit that milestone soon. So maybe also share the video. If you want to follow me on social media, follow me at The Cavernacle on Twitter, that is the main one, but also Facebook and Instagram. Reddit is also a big one for me, so r/The Cavernacle for my subreddit, u/Tommy Cahill 1995 for my personal Reddit. My Patreon is in the description, and thanks to everyone who's a patron, it means so much to me. Check out my WordPress and Medium if you want to see some stuff I have written. And if you made it this far, thank you for watching.